During the peak of my vacation, my son sent me a text message that read, "We are aware this beach house belongs to you, but we need privacy with my wife's family, so kindly relocate to a hotel." I responded with a single word, acknowledged. Then I executed my ultimate strategy. What transpired within the next 60 minutes forced my in-laws to plead with my son to end his marriage to their daughter. The afternoon heat in the coastal lowlands doesn't merely warm your skin, it melts away all pretense, scorching through stone and filling the air with the fragrance of dried moss and the relentless buzz of insects that makes your head throb by nightfall. However, here on the patio of Azure Haven, the warmth felt distinctly different. Hey friends, welcome back to GraceTime with Auntie. I'm so happy to see you here. Tell me, which country are you watching from today? Grab your coffee, sit back, and let's dive into today's amazing story together. The atmosphere was oppressive, not from moisture, but from the frozen silence hovering over the dining area. I stood at the kitchen counter with my back toward my visitors, slicing through a ripe, honeyed watermelon. The blade glided into the fruit with a gentle crunch. This was my domain. I had designed this blueprint personally 2 decades ago. I understood precisely why the window faced the southwest direction to capture the evening sunlight without permitting the harsh afternoon blaze. I recalled selecting these cream-colored Italian tiles, debating with the builder about the elevation of the counters. Every single inch of this residence was a manifestation of my vision, my effort, my dedication. Yet today, I felt like a phantom within these walls, an invisible presence whose sole purpose was to provide service, maintain cleanliness, and vanish from sight. At the expansive table on the patio, beneath the shelter of a vine-covered pergola, sat those who acted as if they owned everything. My son Brandon had his face buried in his meal, deliberately avoiding eye contact with me. His posture was hunched, and in that position, I recognized the young boy who used to seek refuge behind my dress after shattering a neighbor's window. Only now he wasn't seeking protection from me, but hiding his shame from my gaze. Across from him sat Marcus and Vivian Crawford, my daughter-in-law's parents. They consumed the grilled salmon I had prepared with expressions suggesting they were doing the fish a tremendous favor by allowing it to enter their mouths. Vivian, a heavy-set woman adorned in excessive gold jewelry that appeared absurd against the backdrop of a relaxed seaside lunch, patted her lips with a napkin and shoved her plate away with contempt. "The fish seems somewhat overcooked," she declared loudly, addressing nobody specifically. "Do you recall that restaurant in Charleston, Marcus? The salmon there was considerably more succulent." Marcus grunted without glancing up from his mobile device. The service was superior there as well. But the most piercing voice belonged to Sienna. My daughter-in-law occupied the head position of the table, my table, pouring chilled wine into glasses. She wore a flowing ivory dress that complemented her radiant complexion beautifully, yet did nothing to conceal the predatory look upon her face. She surveyed the patio like a commander inspecting conquered land. "Mother, father, you have absolutely no concept of what plans we've arranged," she chirped. Her voice scraped against my nerves like metal grinding on glass. "Brandon and I have decided this wall here serves no purpose. We're demolishing it, installing floor-to-ceiling windows, panoramic ocean views, and this garden." She waved her wineglass carelessly toward my rose plants, which I had cultivated for years, selecting varieties that could withstand the salty coastal air. Too antiquated. All these shrubs and flower arrangements. We require minimalism, concrete, glass, perfectly trimmed grass. Isn't that right, Brandon? Brandon flinched and nodded hastily, stuffing bread into his mouth. "Absolutely, darling. Whatever you prefer." I froze while holding the platter of watermelon. Inside, somewhere deep within my chest, a frozen mass formed. They were discussing the demolition of my life's work as if I were invisible, as if I were merely part of the furniture, an outdated piece soon to be discarded. "Miss Eleanor," Sienna's voice cracked like a whip. "We've run out of wine. Fetch another bottle from the refrigerator and bring more ice. This ice has completely melted." She didn't even rotate her head. She simply snapped her fingers in the air. The Crawfords exchanged glances with a slight, barely perceptible smirk. In their universe, only two categories of people existed: those who are served and those who serve. To them, I, the proprietor of a villa worth a fortune, was merely a squatter, a destitute relative permitted to remain out of charity in exchange for household duties. I exhaled slowly, counting to 3. Rage is a terrible counselor. Rage is an emotion, and emotions destroy foundation. As an architect, I understood that if a foundation develops cracks, you cannot simply cover them with plaster. But right now, I had to maintain composure for my son's sake, for the fragile peace I believed I was obligated to preserve. "I'll retrieve it immediately," I said quietly. My voice was steady, without tremor. I positioned the watermelon on the table, collected the empty bottle, and withdrew into the coolness of the house. There, in the silence of the corridor, I pressed my forehead against the chilled wall. My heart was pounding so intensely it reverberated in my ears. "Endure this, Eleanor," I told myself. "They're departing in 1 week. You survived construction in the 90s. You survived divorce. You survived economic downturns. You can survive this disrespect." Returning with the wine, I caught Vivian's gaze upon me. It wasn't sympathetic. Instead, it held a condescending curiosity, the type one uses to observe a peculiar insect. "So, Eleanor, you manage everything yourself completely alone?" she drawled. "We employ help for such tasks back home. Brandon mentioned you simply have nothing occupying your time in retirement, so you occupy yourself with chores." I didn't respond. I simply poured their wine, feeling an invisible thread inside me pulling tighter, stretching to the breaking point beyond which lies the snap. "I need to visit the market," I said abruptly. The words emerged on their own. I needed to escape, to break free from this circle of humiliation, to breathe air not saturated with the poison of arrogance. "We're running low on fresh figs. Do you enjoy figs with your cheese?" "Oh, proceed then," Sienna tossed out carelessly, already turning back toward her parents. "And collect some of those large olives. Just avoid purchasing the inferior ones like last time." I grabbed my bag and walked out the gate without even changing my attire. The sun struck my eyes, but I welcomed it. I walked down the winding street toward the ocean, past ancient oak trees draped in moss, standing like guardians. The sound of the waves grew louder, drowning out the voices in my head. Here, among ordinary people, among the aromas of fried shrimp, spices, and the sea, I usually felt alive. The marketplace was bustling. Vendors were calling out to customers. It smelled of herbs and smoked fish. I stopped at a stall with a familiar vendor to select figs, dark purple ones with skins splitting from ripeness. I was choosing the finest fruit, out of habit, caring for those I left back at the villa. And then, in the pocket of my linen dress, my phone vibrated. I pulled it out, squinting against the sun. A message from Brandon. My heart skipped a beat. Perhaps he felt ashamed. Perhaps he wanted to apologize for his wife's behavior. I opened the chat. The letters danced before my eyes, but the meaning hit me instantly, like a blow to the stomach. "Mother, we know this is your beach house, but Sienna's parents feel uncomfortable. We want to be alone with them. Discuss the family business. Please move to a hotel until the end of the week. We'll pay for the room." I froze in the middle of the market square. People flowed around me. Someone bumped my shoulder, muttering an apology, but I didn't hear them. The world around me had gone silent. "Your beach house?" That's what he called my home, my sanctuary. Uncomfortable in my own house. Move to a hotel. I reread the message, and again the tears that had been rising to my throat for the last 2 hours suddenly vanished, evaporated like a drop of water on scorching iron. Instead of resentment, Instead of the bitterness of an abandoned mother, something else arrived, a cold, crystal-clear understanding. I saw the structure of their lies. I saw the rot in the load-bearing pillars of our relationship. For years I had closed my eyes to the cracks, patched them with my love, my money, my patience. But now the building had collapsed, and I had no intention of standing in the ruins. They want to be alone. They want to discuss family business in my house after expelling me. Well then, I didn't call and scream. I didn't write long tirades about conscience and gratitude. I felt like a surgeon picking up a scalpel to cut out. Gangrene. I typed one word, understood, and pressed send. Then I closed the chat with my son. I didn't open a hotel booking application. I opened my contacts list and scrolled down to a name I hadn't dialed in 3 years, but kept just in case. Raymond, luxury real estate. The ringtone started immediately. I stood in the middle of the market, clutching a bag of figs in one hand that they were destined never to taste, and in the other, the phone that had become my detonator. "Hello, Miss Eleanor." The voice on the line was surprised. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Haven't heard from you in ages." "Hello, Raymond," I said. My voice was as hard as the granite foundation of my house. "Are you still looking for buyers for prime waterfront property?" "Always, Eleanor, always. Why, is one of the neighbors selling?" "No," I answered, looking at the sparkling sea in the distance. "I am selling Azure Haven." "You're joking. Azure Haven, and I need a buyer today, right now." I threw the bag of figs into the nearest trash can. The sweet fruits hit the bottom with a dull thud, and that sound became the period at the end of my past life. I turned and walked away from the market, not toward home, but toward the waterfront, where behind glass walls like an aquarium, Raymond sat in his office. The realtor's office greeted me with the chill of air conditioning and the smell of expensive coffee. Raymond, a heavy-set man with a shrewd squint and a graying beard, jumped up from his desk as soon as I crossed the threshold. He had known me a long time. He remembered how I fought the zoning committee for every foot of land for Azure Haven, how I battled for the permits for utilities. He knew the value of my word. "Eleanor," he swept his gaze over me, reading the confusion. My simple linen dress and lack of makeup clearly clashed with the determination in my eyes. "Are you serious? The Haven? Your masterpiece?" I sat in the chair opposite him, wasting no time on pleasantries. "I need an urgent showing, Raymond. Not just a showing. I need a deal today." Raymond slowly sank back into his chair, interlacing his fingers over his stomach. His professional instinct, honed by decades of deals with capricious wealthy clients, was already firing on all cylinders. "Today is a flexible concept in real estate, Eleanor. Usually that means this month. You know the market, documents, inspections, negotiations. My documents are in order. The title is clean. No liens. I am the sole owner." I spoke dryly, chopping my sentences. "I don't need negotiations. I need a person with cash who wants this house right now, someone ready to pay for immediate possession." Raymond squinted, studying my face. He was looking for traces of hysteria, madness, or despair, but he saw only cold calculation. "Did something happen?" he asked cautiously. "A new life has begun," I replied, "and there is no room in it for old walls. Do you have such a client?" Raymond chewed his lip, then abruptly reached for his keyboard. "There is one. Maxwell Kingston, a developer from Boston. Enormous wealth, temperament like dynamite. He's been eyeing your property for a long time, says the view is worth millions. He's in town right now looking for something turnkey to move in tomorrow and inhabit. But he's difficult, Eleanor, very difficult." "I don't care about his character as long as he has the cash," I cut him off. "Call him. Tell him the owner is ready to show the house in an hour and warn him the condition of sale is immediate vacating of the premises by—" I stumbled for a second, choosing the word, "by the temporary occupants." Raymond raised his eyebrows but didn't ask questions. He dialed a number, put it on speaker, and winked at me. "Hello, Mr. Kingston." "Yes, it's Raymond. Remember that house on the point?" "Yes, the one with the terraces. The owner is ready." "Yes, today. Price?" He looked at me questioningly. I wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it to him, a number that would ensure a comfortable retirement anywhere in the world. Raymond chuckled approvingly and voiced the sum. A coarse, rumbling laugh came from the speaker. "If it's everything you described, I'll take it sight unseen. We're rolling out. Be at the gates in 40 minutes. Raymond hung up. He bit. "Now, let's sign a preliminary letter of intent so you don't change your mind when emotions cool down." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't tremble. I wasn't signing away a house. I was signing for my freedom. With every stroke of the pen, I felt the weight that had pressed on my shoulders for years becoming lighter. I was no longer the convenient mother, the free cook, or the squatter. I was Eleanor Whitmore again, the architect of my own destiny. "Thank you, Raymond." I stood up. "Meet you at the villa." Leaving the office, I looked at my reflection in the window, a tired woman in a simple dress with stray strands of hair. No, this wouldn't do. I wouldn't return there as a victim. I would return as the master of the situation. I walked into a boutique next door. It was an expensive shop where Sienna, my daughter-in-law, only went to window shop and complain about the prices. I walked in with confidence. I didn't need a dress or a suit. There was no time for that. I needed details, accessories that change one's posture. I chose a silk scarf, emerald green with gold thread, noble and severe. I tied it around my neck the way I used to when I defended architectural projects before commissions in my youth. Then I walked to the rack of sunglasses, oversized tortoiseshell frames. They hid the fatigue in my eyes and gave my face an expression of impenetrable mystery. Paying with my card, I walked out onto the street. Now I felt different. The fabric on my neck cooled my skin. The dark glasses created a distance between me and the world. I went into a coastal cafe, ordered an espresso, and sat at a table with a view of the town clock tower. I had 30 minutes left. I wasn't afraid of returning. On the contrary, I was anticipating it. Inside me, the excitement of a gambler ignited, one who knows the opponent's cards, but they can't see hers. I remembered their faces at lunch, their disdain, their certainty that I would meekly pack my things and leave for a cheap motel so as not to disturb their family happiness. They think they control the situation. They think I am weak. They are mistaken. I took out my phone. I needed to make one more move, small but important. A warning shot before the cannonade. I opened my banking application, found the statement showing my pension deposits and the complete absence of any transfers from my son for the past 3 years. Then I opened a folder of documents in the cloud, a scan of the property deed, date of issue 2003, owner's name Eleanor Whitmore. I saved this file into a separate archive and password protected it. Then I opened my messaging application and found the contact, the Crawfords. I had never texted them. I had the number just in case. I attached the file and added a caption. "A gift for the family. I'll give you the password when we meet. Send." The message went through. 2 check marks lit up instantly. I imagined Marcus and Vivian's phones pinging simultaneously there on my terrace. They would probably be surprised, frown, decide I sent them some silly recipe or photos of grandchildren that don't exist yet. They wouldn't be able to open the file now. But the seed of curiosity was planted, and when the time came, it would sprout into a storm. The phone vibrated again. It was Raymond. "Kingston is on site. We're moving out. Be there in 15 minutes. I finished my coffee in one gulp. The bitterness on my tongue tasted sweet to me. I stood up, adjusted my glasses, and headed to the taxi stand. It was time to go home for the last time, not as a servant, but as the sword of justice. The taxi sped me up the winding road toward Azure Haven. I watched the pines and the sea flashing by the window, the sea that had given me peace for so many years. Today it would witness my triumph or my ruin. But I knew one thing. The old Eleanor was gone. She stayed back at the market with the crushed figs. The car stopped at the gates. I saw a massive black vehicle already parked there. Maxwell Kingston's car. Raymond stood nearby, glancing nervously at his watch. Maxwell himself, a mountain of a man in a sand-colored linen suit, was talking loudly on his phone, pacing along the fence. I got out of the taxi. Raymond noticed me and exhaled with relief. Maxwell interrupted his conversation and stared at me. I approached them without taking off my glasses. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," I said. "Apologies for the delay." "Miss Eleanor?" Maxwell grunted, sizing me up. "Raymond told me you were a sweet little old lady, but here I see a boss. I like it, businesslike." "Time is money, Mr. Kingston," I replied, opening the gate with my key. "Please, the tour will be short." We entered the courtyard. From the depths of the garden, from the direction of the terrace, came the clinking of glasses and Sienna's loud laughter. They were celebrating. They were drinking my wine, sitting in my house, confident they had expelled me. I turned to the men. "I have one condition before we go in," I said quietly. Maxwell frowned. "Which is?" "There are unauthorized persons in the house right now. They don't know about the sale, and they believe they have a right to be there. I need you to play along. You are not just a buyer. You are the new owner who tolerates no objections." Maxwell spread into a wide, predatory grin, his eyes lit up with amusement. "Evicting squatters. I love that even more than buying houses. Lead the way, Miss Eleanor. Let's put on a show." We moved down the walkway toward the house. The laughter on the terrace grew louder. I heard Brandon's voice, relaxed and content. "Yes, Father Crawford. Great toast to us." I stepped onto the terrace stairs. Maxwell and Raymond followed me like two bodyguards. The show begins. I threw open the glass terrace doors, and the festive hum died instantly, as if someone had pulled the plug. Brandon froze with his glass raised. His mouth opened in absurd surprise. Sienna, who was sitting on her husband's lap, slowly slid onto her own chair. Her eyes narrowed. The Crawfords, Marcus and Vivian, froze with forks in their hands, looking at me as if a stray dog had burst into their banquet. But I didn't look like a stray dog. I stood straight in dark glasses and a silk scarf, and behind me loomed two men in expensive suits. "Mother." Brandon recovered first. His voice trembled. "Mother, you came back. We had an agreement." Sienna immediately seized the initiative. She jumped up, straightened her dress, and pasted on that fake, sugary smile she used for inconvenient relatives. "Miss Eleanor," she chirped, stepping forward and trying to block the view of the table with the half-eaten delicacies. "You must have forgotten something. Suitcase, passport. We thought you were checking into the hotel already. We wired you the money for a taxi." She reached into the purse hanging on the back of the chair. I knew this gesture. She was going to pull out a couple of bills crumpled into a careless ball and try to shove them into my hand like a pesky beggar so I would get out of sight quickly. Her parents watched this with approving nods. For them, this was standard procedure. Pay off the problem. "Yes," boomed Marcus Crawford, not standing up. "Not cool, mother-in-law. A deal is a deal. The young folks wanted to be alone, and here you are with guests." He waved his fork dismissively toward Maxwell and Raymond. "Who is this anyway? Your boyfriends from the senior center?" Vivian giggled, covering her mouth with a napkin. "Marcus, stop. Maybe they're porters. Miss Eleanor, let them take your things from the hall, and let's not spoil the evening." I remained silent. I just looked at them through the dark lenses of my glasses. I saw Sienna had already pulled out the money, a crisp $50 bill, and was holding it out to me with the air of a benefactor. "Here, take this for dinner at a restaurant," she said loudly so her parents could hear her generosity. "And go. Really, this isn't the time. We have a family council." Brandon, my son, sat with his head down. He didn't look at me. He twirled the stem of his wine glass as if hoping that if he spun it long enough, I would disappear. "Mother, please," he muttered barely audibly. "Don't embarrass us. Leave." That leave sounded like a gunshot, quiet, suppressed, but fatal. He had chosen a side finally and irrevocably. I slowly took off my glasses. My gaze was dry and calm. No tears, no pleading, only cold steel. I ignored Sienna's outstretched bill, walked past her as if she were empty space, and stood in the center of the room. "Mr. Kingston," I said loud and clear, addressing my companion. "Come in. Don't be shy." Maxwell, massive and noisy, stepped forward, brushing Sienna aside with his shoulder so that she barely stayed on her feet. He surveyed the spacious living room, flooded with golden pre-sunset light, like a landlord. "Not bad," he boomed. His voice filled the entire space, drowning out the sound of the surf. "High ceilings, lots of air. I love it when there's lots of air." Sienna gasped with indignation. "Who are you?" she shrieked. "How dare you barge into someone else's house? Brandon, do something. Call the police." Brandon jumped up in confusion, but seeing Maxwell's size, he immediately deflated. Excuse me, but this is private property," he began uncertainly. "Exactly," barked Marcus Crawford, standing up to his full height, his face flushed red. "This is my daughter and son-in-law's house. Get the hell out of here before I call private security. And you, Eleanor, have you completely lost your mind in your old age, bringing strange men here?" I turned to Maxwell, completely ignoring the screams of the in-laws and daughter-in-law. "As you can see, the living room has excellent natural light." I continued my tour calmly, gesturing toward the panoramic windows. "Open layout but clear zoning. The kitchen dining area flows into the relaxation zone." Maxwell smirked, understanding the game. He walked to the wall, knocked on it with his knuckles, then stomped his foot on the parquet. "Solid," he approved. "Not drywall. Feels like stone. And the view? Show me the balcony view." "Of course," I nodded. "Right this way." We moved toward the balcony exit, walking straight through the group of stunned relatives. Sienna grabbed my elbow. Her fingers dug into my skin. Long nails scratched my forearm. "What are you doing?" she hissed in my face, forgetting the mask of politeness. Her eyes were full of rage and fear. "Are you crazy in front of my parents? Do you want to ruin everything? I told you to get out." I slowly looked at her hand on my elbow, then raised my eyes to her face. "Get your hands off me," I said quietly, but with such intonation that Sienna jerked her hand back as if burned. "And don't interrupt the showing." "Showing?" repeated Vivian, blinking. "What showing?" I turned to her, then to Marcus, then to Brandon, and finally looked at Maxwell again. "Mr. Kingston," I said loudly so everyone could hear. "How do you like the house?" "I'll take it," he answered briefly, shoving his hands into his trouser pockets. "Location is prime. House is solid. We discussed the price. I'll transfer the money right now if the keys are on the table in an hour." Silence hung in the room, so thick it seemed you could cut it with a knife. You could only hear a fly buzzing against the glass. "What do you mean, take it?" whispered Sienna. Her face began to lose color, turning gray under the layer of foundation. I smiled. It wasn't a kind, motherly smile. It was the smile of a chess player delivering checkmate. "That means, dear daughter-in-law," I pronounced, enunciating every word, "that this house is sold. And as you can see, the current residents," I waved my hand at them, "are temporary squatters, and they will vacate the premises within an hour." "You can't!" screeched Sienna, looking back at her parents. "Mom, Dad, she's delirious. She has dementia. She thinks she's selling our house." Marcus frowned. His thick eyebrows met at the bridge of his nose. He looked at me, then at his daughter, then at Brandon, who had turned whiter than chalk. "Sienna," he said in a heavy voice, "what is she talking about? Why does she call this house hers?" Sienna panicked. "Dad, don't listen to her. She's just listed as a nominal owner for taxes. You know how it is. We pay the mortgage. We put millions into this. This is our house." "Nominal?" asked Maxwell with a sneer. Lady, I saw the documents half an hour ago. It's there in black and white. Eleanor Whitmore, sole owner. No liens, no mortgages, no shared ownership. Clean as a baby's tear. Sienna opened her mouth to object, but no sound came out. She frantically searched for a new lie, but the web she had been weaving for years began to tear under the weight of the truth. I walked to the coffee table where an ice bucket with champagne stood. Next to it lay my folder, which I had brought from Raymond's office. I opened it, took out the original property deed, thick paper with watermarks and an official seal, and placed it right under Marcus Crawford's nose. "Read it, Marcus," I said. "You're a man of the old school. You trust documents more than words." Marcus slowly, as if reluctantly, picked up the paper. His hands, large working hands of a man who built his own business, trembled slightly. He put on the glasses hanging on a chain around his neck, read, raised his eyes to his daughter, then looked at the paper again. "Whitmore," he read aloud. "Basis, land purchase agreement from 2001, certificate of occupancy for residential home from 2005. He lowered the paper. It became very cold in the room despite the heat. "Sienna," Marcus's voice was quiet, but that made it even more terrifying. "You told us that you and Brandon bought this house 3 years ago. You said you took out a huge loan. You cried and asked for help with the down payment." "Dad, Sienna backed away. "We sent you money every month," Marcus continued, and his voice began to gain strength like an avalanche. $5,000 every month for 3 years to pay off the mortgage. I stood silently. I didn't need to add anything. The truth was doing its own work, destroying their illusory world. "Where is the mortgage, Sienna?" roared Marcus, slamming his palm on the table so hard the glasses jumped. "Where's the loan? If the house was built 20 years ago and belongs to his mother." I looked at Brandon. He covered his face with his hands. "Mother, there is no mortgage," I said quietly, looking straight into Vivian's eyes. "I built this house with my own money. I never asked you for a penny. I never received $1 from you." The silence exploded. Marcus Crawford slowly turned purple. The color rose from his neck to his face like mercury in a thermometer, predicting an explosion. He shifted his gaze from the document to his daughter, and then to his son-in-law, who was still hiding his face in his hands. $5,000, he wheezed. "Every month, 3 years. That's $180,000. Where is that money, Sienna?" Sienna, cornered, tried to counterattack. It was her usual tactic. The best defense is offense. "Dad, you don't understand," she screamed. Her voice broke into a squeal. "The house needed investments. Renovations. We did renovations. Did you see these tiles, these windows? All this costs money. We changed the plumbing, the roof." I couldn't hold back and chuckled. A short, dry laugh escaped on its own. "Renovations," I repeated, walking to the wall and running my palm over the textured plaster. "Sienna, this plaster was applied in 2010. Hand-finished Italian style. It is in perfect condition because I take care of it. The floor tiles, vintage 2008 collection. I installed the windows 5 years ago, before your marriage. There were no renovations here. Not a single nail was driven with your money." "You're lying!" shrieked Sienna, pointing a finger with a perfect manicure at me. "You're just an old miser." "Silence!" roared Marcus, shaking the chandelier. He stepped toward his daughter, looming over her like a cliff. "Don't you dare insult the woman in whose house you live, and lie to our faces. Renovations, you say? Plumbing? I'm a builder, Sienna. I see when a house has been renovated, and when it stands untouched for 10 years. You took us for idiots." Vivian, who had been silent in shock until now, suddenly sobbed and clutched her heart. "Sienna, baby, how could you? We saved up from Dad's retirement fund. We thought you were struggling." Brandon finally took his hands off his face. He was pale as a sheet. "I didn't know," he whispered, looking at his father-in-law with horror. "Mr. Crawford, I swear I didn't know about the money. Sienna said you were just helping with groceries, lifestyle stuff. I didn't know the amounts. I thought they were gifts." "Gifts?" roared Marcus. "Gifts the size of a top executive's salary. Are you a man or what? You don't see where your wife gets new furs, cars, trips to tropical islands while you sit at your college as a junior associate? You thought it all falls from the sky." Brandon shrank. He really was blind, or wanted to be blind. It was convenient for him not to ask questions, convenient to live in comfort created by his wife, and not think about where the funds came from. He betrayed me with his silence and inaction. But now I saw that he wasn't an accomplice to the theft, but just a tool in Sienna's hands, like her parents. A stupid, weak tool. "All right, family drama is fascinating and all." Maxwell's loud voice cut through the tension. He stood leaning against the doorframe, watching the scene with interest, chewing on a toothpick. "But for me, time is money. I assume the deal is still on, or do I call my guys to help with the eviction? I have a demolition crew on standby, wanted to break down a wall tomorrow morning." The words about demolition had a sobering effect on the Crawfords. They suddenly realized the reality of what was happening. They were in a stranger's house that had just been sold, and the new owner wasn't a man you argued with. "Demolition," repeated Vivian, looking at Maxwell with horror. "Tomorrow? But where will we go? Our flight isn't for 3 days." "Not my problem, ma'am." Maxwell spread his hands. "The Hampton downtown, deluxe suites, ocean view, everything you like. Need me to call a cab?" Marcus heavily sat down at the table. All his arrogance, all his hostility vanished. Before us sat a tired, deceived old man who had just realized he raised a monster. "Eleanor," he addressed me by name for the first time with respect, not disdain. "Forgive us. We were misled. We thought—" "You thought I was a poor relative living off your successful daughter." I finished for him harshly. "You thought you were feeding me, not me providing you shelter. You allowed yourselves to humiliate me in my own home because you believe that he who pays the piper calls the tune. But you weren't paying me. You were paying for lies." Marcus nodded, acknowledging every word. He had nothing to object to. "You are right. We are at fault. We will pack our things right now." "Dad!" Sienna rushed to him, grabbing his arm. "Are you giving up? Will you let her kick us out? This is just a performance. She's bluffing. She didn't sell anything to anyone." She turned to me. Her eyes burned with a feverish glint. "You won't sell this house. You wouldn't dare. This is Brandon's inheritance. You are obligated to leave it to him. Obligated." I walked up to her closely. "I was obligated to raise a son. I did that. I was obligated to give him an education. I did that. But I am not obligated to sponsor his spinelessness and your greed. This house is my pension fund, Sienna, and I just cashed it out. Raymond?" I nodded to the realtor. "Get the sales contract. Mr. Kingston, let's sign right here on the table while the guests are packing." Raymond, who had stood as a silent shadow all this time, quickly took a folder out of his briefcase and laid the papers on the table, pushing aside a plate of half-eaten fish. "Pen here." He handed an expensive fountain pen to Maxwell. Maxwell walked to the table, scanned the text, grunted, and signed with a flourish. "Done. Money sent. Check the account, Miss Eleanor." My phone pinged. I took it out. A notification from the bank. A sum with 6 zeros. "Money received," I said, showing the screen to Sienna. "Now this house is officially not mine, and certainly not yours. You have 45 minutes to vacate the premises. Time starts now." Sienna stood staring at the phone screen like she was hypnotized. Her world was collapsing. Not just a house by the sea. The scheme was collapsing. The source of income, the status. "No," she whispered. "No, it can't be." And then Brandon did something I didn't expect from him. He stood up, walked over to Sienna, and grabbed her by the shoulders. "Sienna," he said, Where is my parents' money? She jerked, trying to break free. Get off. Not now. Can't you see we're being kicked out? Forget the house, Brandon shouted. For the first time in his life, he raised his voice at his wife. Where is the 180,000? What did you spend it on? On us, she shrieked. On your car, on your clothes, so you wouldn't look like a bum next to my friends, so we could live like people. My car is financed, yelled Brandon. I pay for it from my paycheck. You said you only chipped in for the down payment, and the rest, clothes, your endless personal growth retreats in tropical resorts? Yes, I wanted to live beautifully. Sienna broke into hysterics, smearing mascara over her face. And you are misers. You have millions in your accounts, but you begrudge your only daughter. You are a thief, said Marcus, heavy as a verdict. You stole from your parents. You lied to your husband. You humiliated his mother. He turned to Brandon. Pack your bags, son. Are you coming to the hotel with us? We have a lot to discuss. Brandon nodded. He looked broken, but in his eyes appeared something new. Some kind of clarity. But Sienna wasn't going to give up. She saw she was losing control over everyone, over her parents, over her husband, over the situation. She needed a trump card, the last most powerful trump card. She straightened up, wiped the tears with the back of her hand, and looked at us all with the triumphant smile of a desperate woman. You can't kick me out, she said quietly but distinctly. And you, Brandon, aren't going anywhere. And you, Dad, won't leave me. Why is that? Asked Maxwell, crossing his arms over his chest. Sienna placed a hand on her flat stomach. Because I'm pregnant, she shouted. You're going to have a grandson, an heir. You won't throw a pregnant woman onto the street. Eleanor, you're going to be a grandmother. You wouldn't dare. Silence hung in the room again. Brandon froze. His mouth opened. Hope flared in his eyes. Pregnant? He whispered. Sienna, is it true? Vivian gasped and pressed her hands to her chest. Marcus froze. I looked at Sienna, at her pose, at her eyes darting across the faces assessing the effect, and I knew. I just knew. I slowly exhaled. Strange, Sienna, I pronounced. Very strange. What's strange? She snapped, but panic flashed in her eyes. Strange diet for a pregnant woman. I lifted the champagne bottle higher. Brut Imperial, 12% alcohol content. You drank almost the entire bottle during lunch. I poured for you twice myself, and you demanded more. Sienna paled. That's non-alcoholic. No, darling, I shook my head. This is vintage wine. You drank, laughed, and demanded a refill. Pregnant woman who cares about her child wouldn't pour a liter of champagne into herself. Brandon looked at the bottle, then at his wife's empty glass. You were drinking. I saw it. Sienna, you're lying. Marcus walked up to his daughter, grabbed her chin. Breathe on me. Sienna, breathe. Sienna jerked away, giving herself away completely. You're not pregnant, said Marcus with disgust. You're just a lying wretch. It was a mistake, Sienna sobbed. I thought I was. Enough, Marcus cut her off. He turned to Brandon. Son, this woman is sick with greed. She stole from us. She humiliated your mother. She invented a child to manipulate us. If you leave with her now, you are dead to me. I'm cutting her out of the will. She won't get a penny. And you, if you stay with her, will live on your salary and pay her debts. Brandon looked at his wife, then at me, then at Marcus. I'm filing for divorce, he said quietly but firmly. What? Sienna froze. I'm filing for divorce, he repeated louder. I don't believe you anymore. I'm tired of being a fool. He turned to me. Mother, forgive me. I was blind. I nodded. I forgive you, son, but the house is sold and you have to leave. I understand. He lowered his head. Drama over. Maxwell clapped his hands. Exit stage left, folks. Marcus silently took the resisting Sienna by the elbow. They shuffled toward the exit. 5 minutes later, their car screeched out the gates. It became quiet. Only me, Raymond, Maxwell, and the sound of the sea remained. "Well then, landlady," Maxwell winked. "Beautifully done. Money's in the account, papers signed." I walked to the terrace railing. The sun was setting, painting the water gold. "Mr. Kingston, how about we rewrite the ending?" Maxwell looked at me with interest. "Rewrite? We're not in a theater." "The transaction is still pending," I said. "We can cancel by mutual agreement. I'll return the full amount plus 10% for your trouble." Maxwell laughed thunderously. "You knew right away you weren't selling. I saw it in your eyes. When you showed me the house, you stroked the walls like they were children." He tore the contract in half. "I'm not a looter. I saw you were cornered. I didn't like your daughter-in-law from the start. Consider this my contribution to justice. You'll transfer the penalty. Business is business, but the house is yours." He extended his hand. "Pleasure doing business with a smart woman." We shook hands. My phone rang again. "Brandon," I answered on speaker. "Mother, this is hell. Dad Crawford kicked Sienna out on the highway. Mrs. Crawford is sick. I don't know what to do." "Call an ambulance for Vivian," I said harshly. "Stay with the parents who became victims of your wife. Sienna has money for a taxi." "But she's my wife." "She is a criminal, Brandon. You make a choice." A pause. "No, I won't go back. I'm going to the police with them." "Right decision. Can I come to you later? I have nowhere to go." I looked at my living room. "No, Brandon. My house is under quarantine from stupidity. You are 35. Get a hotel room. Figure out your life yourself. Only then will you become a man." "Mother, you're abandoning me." "I'm letting you go. Those are different things. Call me in a month when you have a divorce decree. Goodbye." I ended the call. Maxwell clapped slowly. "That was stronger than selling the house. That takes love." "Sometimes love isn't letting them lean on you," I said. The next morning, Maxwell appeared at my gate with roses and a proposal. "I rent Azure Haven for the summer. I'll water your roses while you travel. My security will keep relatives away." It was perfect. An hour later, I was in a taxi. My phone pinged. Brandon's message. "Filed the report. Sienna detained. It's bad. I'm looking for a job. Forgive me." I smiled and typed. "I believe in you. See you in a month. I'll bring you an Italian tie. Love you." Then I blocked Sienna's number forever. I leaned back, looking at the road ahead. Ahead was the airport. Ahead was Rome. Ahead was a life that belonged only to me. I closed my eyes and heard not the noise of others' demands, but the music of my own soul. The silence was magnificent. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey, dear friends. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most beautiful freedom. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to GraceTime with Auntie, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, remember to stand strong, value yourself, and never let anyone dim your light. With love and blessings, this is Auntie Grace saying goodbye for now.